So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Miranda Dold. I am the manager and social worker of the Goldstone Caregiver Center at Danbury Hospital. And on behalf of the Caregiver Center and also the Faith Community Nurse Program, I'd like to welcome you all to today's program called Exercise Essentials for the Caregiver, Moving for Your Own Health, presented by Michele Smallidge. Michele is the wellness manager at Nuvance Health and also uses her passion for exercise and nutrition as a faculty member and founding director of the Exercise Science Program of the University of New Haven School of Health Sciences. Michele has worked in the field of clinical nutrition and exercise, and most recently wellness at Nuvance for over 25 years. She is most notably recognized at the hospital as the founder and manager of the Vitav Health program. Exercise and physical activity can become the last activity on the to-do list, especially when the day is full of taking care of others. It's time to make a change and put moving and being active at the top of the priority list for all of you. While engaging in regular physical activity is well known for its long-term health benefits, recent research has demonstrated many immediate positive effects too. So today we will take a deeper dive into how regular exercise and simply moving can immediately improve blood pressure, sleep habits, mood, and much more. So with that, Michele, I want to thank you so much for being with us today to present on this extremely important topic.
Wow, well, thank you for that introduction, Miranda. And thanks for giving me this opportunity to get the word out and the message out about exercise. It's a passion of mine, as you all know. We have, I think, a crisis also in our country where we're sitting a lot more. So this is a timely topic. And we do have some new information regarding the health benefits of exercise that I'd like to share with all of you. So, it is a big, broad topic, but it is a really important one. So, I'm going to speed through some of it because I think more or less people would like some answers to questions they have or concerns. So I want to save some of that for the end. So again, welcome. We're looking at unique needs. We want to focus on just moving and why it's important. I'm going to try to drive that point home because I think the more we understand why, the more motivated we are. Want to look at exercise as medicine. So we're going to go through a couple of studies that have been coming out and how they're impacted. I'm not going to go deep into some of these studies, but I will mention some of the effects that exercise and physical activity have on our health and what we do know and what we have confirmed. And then we're going to put it all together with some moves and maybe some ideas of how you can incorporate some of this stuff into your own lives. I just want to do a brief overview and remind everybody that this is part of the Goldstones theme, is that we are looking to care for the caregiver, but also that we understand that and that it's very difficult in addition to other barriers in your life, including, the regular life challenges. You also have challenges with taking care of somebody. So we understand all that. We unfortunately cannot change some of that, but we do want to remind you that those the barriers are a little extra and maybe it is going to be a little tougher for you, but we're with you there and we're really trying to help you get over some of those. Some of the scheduling issues that I want to mention, just because it will tie into some of what we're going to talk about, is that scheduling your own time to do what you want to do and need to do for your health. So we'll talk a little bit about how to do that and what time you should be spending exercising. Also just using foods as an issue or skipping meals. We talked about that in our last conversation about eating. This all ties into physical activity and exercise as well, because it becomes maybe the last priority, and it does affect you wanting to move and being motivated to move. So making sure that these stay as your top priority. I want to start off with a quote. So this is about moving and exercise. What I thought was really cool is that way back when, 2,000 years ago, even Plato knew that moving was important. Lack of activity destroys the good condition of every human being, while movement and methodological physical exercise save it and preserve it. Wow, that's from 2,000 years ago. So we're really looking at something that is not just from the 1950s when we discovered that heart disease was coming abreast because we're moving less. This was 2,000 years ago. So we really know that this is an important part of our health. It still is. So we can ask about physical activity and why it's important through a couple of different lenses. One is the larger impact. I don't think we really need to go to deeper dive here because we all know this. It does help lower risk of heart diseases, cancers, some other big diseases, arthritis. We do know it improves our mental health. We do know it helps us feeling good in the moment as well. And over time, being active helps with our mental stability. It does help with weight control. Obviously with diabetes, either insulin dependent or non, it helps manage your blood glucose. We're going to talk a little bit about the new research on cellular aging that's coming out. And I used improved mood as a different category than in mental health because it actually makes you feel happy. And there's some research that happy mood improves anxiety issues, improves depression issues as well. Some of the smaller changes, because the larger impacts, you know, we're always looking at larger impacts, but you need time, dedication, we need to be consistent. And sometimes we need to understand that there's smaller changes are going to motivate us maybe a little bit more to keep us on track for those larger changes. So smaller changes, more energy. It seems quite the opposite because we need energy to exercise. And you would think, well, if we need more energy, then it's going to tire me out. But in fact, people who exercise actually feel more energized. They have more stable balance issues. They're more able to perform in just general movements better than people who don't exercise. And that happens very quickly. Helps regulate our hormones. So fortunately, when we have issues with hormone, the endocrine system, some of that's diabetic, some of that's control of your body's ability to utilize foods. Also your hormone changes with over time with your mood can be affected by regulating your hormones. So it directly impacts your endocrine system in that way. Probably haven't heard the word mitochondria in a long time if you haven't been in biology class, but we actually create more mitochondria during exercise, and those little powerhouse cells that help create energy, we create more of them the more we exercise. The more we have, the more energy we can create, and we feel more active and more energized. And another direct impact, I know this kind of ties into our lower risk of disease, but it directly impacts your blood pressure. Within the day you're doing it, it may elevate during exercise, but it vasodilates your arteries. So within that day, it can impact your blood pressure for hours after. So having that regularity of exercise can improve your blood pressure immediately and over time. And you're wondering, why did I put doable in this section? Well, it's because you can do it, and it's important to understand that it is doable. Walking is a very easy form of exercise. Biking and hiking, you might need to find a place for it, but you can easily access the walking component of exercise. So it is easily, it's an easily managed type of activity to throw in your day. There are tons of options for everyone. If you wanted to go out on your own and find a place to walk, but you also can go online, and we'll talk about some options that you're not kind of stuck going, oh, I wonder what to do. There are so many options available for everybody. It's on everybody's list. And it's also the access to some clubs and being social and finding groups is greater than ever before, because everybody is trying to squeeze in this exercise on a regular basis. All right, here are some of the studies and little blurbs that I mentioned, and I have all of the references in this PowerPoint. But we have just recently discovered that not only does exercise reduce our diseases, but we can actually reduce our chance of dying. Some research is showing 30% reduction, but some are as high as 42%. And these are large group studies. These are not, on a few hundred people. These are large studies looking at thousands of individuals who actually engage in exercise. And we'll talk a little bit more about how you would get there to help reduce that in another couple of slides. And they're also finding that you can also reduce your risk from any form by 11%, any form of dying from cancers by 11%. So just that one disease alone, you can reduce it by impactful exercise and purposeful exercise. It does have to be regular and routine, but it does pay off. And knowing that that's happening and our research is backing that up is really exciting. There's other research to show that in addition to the endurance benefits, which is more or less the mortality and morbidity, when we engage in any kind of exercise that's resistive training, that you're increasing your strength and your muscle endurance, we've found that you have also reduced your risk of falls, that you have increased your stamina over time. And continuing with your resistance training can really improve that mobility and the stability in your day. So to tie that into what a daily life might look like, you're taking care of yourself and someone else. Maybe you're moving somebody in a wheelchair all day long, in and out of the car. You're lifting grocery bags, heavy grocery bags. You're moving things around. It's most likely very exhausting. And over the length of the day, some of your stability muscles might get fatigued, and you might end up having backaches when you're lying down, or you're not feeling motivated and you're tired. Chances are you might be lacking some of that muscular strength and endurance, and you're really wearing your body out. But just doing those movements alone doesn't always help increase your strength and endurance. So having a regular strength routine may help with your ability to do your job better, and also help your mental stability as well. Some other side notes that I added here. I'm not sure if anyone has ever heard of the nitric oxide. It's a byproduct of exercise. It is created during aerobic exercise. We actually create it while we're exercising, and we can also get it from vegetables. So we get it from spinach and beets and some of the things we mentioned in our nutrition talk. That effect actually reduces, it helps to affect our endothelial cells in our arteries and reduces our blood pressure pretty remarkably, to a point where endurance runners are taking beetroot juice that have high nitric oxide. We have athletes, professional athletes, taking shots of beetroot juice to get that extra nitric oxide burst. But we create it during cardiac workouts, and it's really important to see that side effect. Two others that we maybe could even connect to some of the things that's happening right now, that a lot of our inflammatory responses people are mentioning. Exercise actually helps reduce the inflammation in our cells. And I have some of the studies if anyone's interested. And also, we're able to see that it actually slows down the aging of our cells. So everybody wants that. Everyone wants to look young and beautiful and reduce our aging. So we have really good research to back that up as well. So those other effects, I was trying to kind of reiterate that in this slide, seeing that, we really looking at stress, reducing ideas, always looking at those research studies that are looking at increased moods, reducing anxiety and depression. I put the word beauty because it's actually making our skin less wrinkly. And I know lots of people on this call can relate to that. The youthful feeling and the anti-aging feeling is actually happening at a cellular level. And so we are seeing that some of those endurance and resistive training research-based based research into regeneration of cells and health and anti-aging are really coming back saying, yes, these are directly impactful movements that we're doing with our body. So I know about Botox is great and fillers, but we can actually get some kind of anti-aging effect with exercise as well. Again, just to reiterate the stamina, balance, and strength. Some of that's all cognitive, as you probably are all aware. If over time we start losing our balance, we are connecting some of those things to dementia, and over time we're losing some of those abilities. But we're finding that if you're keeping your strength and endurance up and really working on those core movements and those balance, we can reduce some of those declines. So, we actually have programs out there now working with the Parkinson's group and some of those other groups that have some of those natural declines. And last but not least, some of the reduction in inflammation. Some of the research is showing just a minimum of 20 minutes of moderate exercise can reduce some of those immune cells that produce some of those inflammatory responses by about 5%. So we're really finding that this overall exercise can hit many, many areas of health. So you want some numbers. Okay, let's get some numbers here. So that 31% reduction research was showing that in mortality rate was showing that a minimum of 150 to 750 minutes a week. And this is a moderate. So what does moderate mean? Well, it's more than just a stroll, and it's not so intense that you're out of breath. That's kind of how I would frame moderate. So if you want to break those minutes into a course of 8 weeks, you could do that. Just thinking of that minutes per week is a lot, but if you break it up in a week, you'll see that you can get those chunks of time in. Now, if you're more on the intense end and you can get in a really short, heavy run, your minutes of time spent to lower that mortality is smaller. But most of us are going to fit into that 150 to 750 a week. And that kind of put this into a little bit of a chunk. With every, and we'll get into the steps in a minute too, with every 2,000 steps taken, a person can lower their risk of overall death by 8 to 11%. Those are pretty good. I mean, where else can you get some of those reductions, right? So 2,000, it's about a mile, I would say, for most people, depending on how your length, your stride is. So those are pretty telling stats. So I'm sure you're all thinking now, well, she talked about walking, she's talking about strength. So what are some of these really powerful, best moves that we can think of? Well, first and foremost, aerobic exercise is something you definitely should focus on. And aerobic just means with oxygen. So walking, getting the heart rate up, hiking, biking, rowing, anything that brings that heart rate up and you're using large muscle groups to do that is aerobic. Resistive training, I use resistive instead of strength because you can use bands, you can use cans of food at home, you could use anything for under resistive or your body, resistive against your body weight. The other moves that are really important would be flexibility and stretching. Without those two, you may have a risk when you fall, and we all do at some point, and you're not flexible enough to catch yourself or react, you have a higher risk of injury. So having that flexibility around all different movements is really important. Grabbing somebody that might be falling themselves or doing an irregular movement in your job, having that flexibility and stretch and that ability to stretch in that right direction is really important. And last but not least, power and balance. So I talk about power because everyone thinks like, oh, power lifter, but power just meaning the ability to lift a heavy amount. You don't have to train this very hard, but gone are the days where we do all these little light weights to get in shape because you want to stay physically strong. You do want to have some movements that are a little bit more powerful. Those can be included in some of the ideas I'm going to give in a few minutes, but also incorporating your balance as well. So some core movements would be important as well. I call these super moves because, you're trying to incorporate some of these ideas into like, what can I tangibly call something that would really hit all of them. So power walking, which means you're walking at such a good pace, you're using arms and you're using a powerful stride to get your heart rate up. Right in the middle of that, maybe you do an interval of air squats, or maybe you do an interval of a little bit of a lunge, or maybe you have some weights that you have in your, in your hands, and you stop and you do arm curls. Something where you're intertwining your walk with a little bit of strength movement. I threw Tai Chi right in the middle of this because it combines all of it. You're usually in a group with Tai Chi, or you're watching a video, or maybe you have your own movements, but it combines balance, it combines endurance, strength, endurance with your muscles. And there are some parts of Tai Chi that really can get your heart rate up. So it's a great super move. Yoga as well. There are lots of yogas that are a little bit more faster paced, but also combines body weight resistance, stretching moves, range of motion moves, and doing them in a succinct way can also get your heart rate up, that you're using those range of motion, large group muscles to get that cardio effect. So functional training, that is usually a very difficult thing to do on your own if you don't have the proper form, but that's not to say that you can't pick up something where it's a functional movement that will help you with your job. So some functional training might be taking something off the shelf and putting it down. Some of those side lunges. Another functional movement would be, standing up repeatedly and sitting down, but making sure your feet and your knees are pushed back so your form is proper with your chair squats, but incorporating some of those functional movements into what you yourself have a goal for to do for that day. You probably need some guidance with a trainer to start. Again, we'll come up with some ideas, and there's lots of videos online that you can use as baseline. And then the last, multiple joint movements, right? So gone are the days where you have like one movement and I'm taking care of that one body part. Oh, and then I have to have another movement for that body part. And so to combine all these movements that engage multiple body movements is really important. So a chair squat, for instance, like if we were all to be sitting right now on the edge of our chair, we could stand up and sit down, and then not sit all the way down, and do some square chair squats. You could also do guided ones, which means you're not using a chair, and using that as something you could do in your office. You could do it while you're waiting for somebody you're taking care of at the doctor's office. You could probably even incorporate wall sits in there. So there are multi-movements. You're using your hips, you're using your whole lower body, and you're stabilizing your core. Another one would be a curl and press. So curling a weight and pressing overhead, multiple movements of your upper body. So using that concept to use different joints and different movements instead of one straightforward idea. Step back lunges, just like it sounds, instead of lunging forward on your leg, you could do a step back lunge. And then I added this little jump spring in here because we're looking at a lot of our sitting and a lot of our just walking. We're not engaging our hamstrings as much as we used to when we used to run a little bit more or spring. And over time, that really takes its toll on our hamstring. Our hamstring doesn't get engaged. So try to engage some little jumps. Doesn't have to be vigorous, but having little explosive movements within your week would be a really good idea. And that engages a lot of multiple movements as well. So I just injected this slide in here because the British Medical Journal had this great slide to give you an idea of how are we going to get active and where does this fall in activity guidelines. There's a lot going on in this slide, and there's a lot of, kilojoules per day, per kilogram per day. Ignore all those because we don't need to do all this converting. What I wanted to do with this slide is point out that you can get a brisk walk-in that's pretty high in the metabolic equivalent realm, especially if you're brisk walking. You could do a brisk heavy cleaning, sweeping or raking, you can get a good workout in. I mean, it's not as vigorous, but you just need to do a little bit more of it to hit that goal. Walking your dog, maybe you have, make sure your dog's on track with walking. So getting some of your activity in by doing regular chores. And of course, gardening, this is a little lower on the Met level, but obviously you would have to do it longer to make that equivalent of that exercise. And the lower part of my screen is just showing, some of those higher intense workouts. Obviously, shoveling falls in that with shoveling snow, a very light, I actually call what I do now a trot, but we could call it a light jog. I'm not doing my 7-minute miles like I used to, but that's going to give you quite a good workout and getting your minutes in with that intensity. Of course, if you're a little more spry and your runs are heavier and faster, you'll get some more Met levels in. But these are just ideas of how you can meet some of those goals and some of those equivalents. So, before we get into how do we pull all of this together, you do have to have a mindset. And we were chatting about this at the start of our talk that, we all have intentions. We all kind of have all this information thrown at us all day. Hey, you got to exercise. You got to get this done. But you do want to do something you like, right? So I do have a lot of people still asking me, what do I do? What's the best? I'm like, well, there's a lot of best things, but what do you really like? I think a non-weight bearing exercise occasionally and a weight bearing are good. So I like to ride my bike. I would ride my bike and I trot and I do strength training. Some people don't have a bike or don't like it. So maybe you would find something else to do that's a little bit more enjoyable and incorporate that in. That's the number one. Also, you want to break your workouts up, break them up. Routine is good, but within that routine, have a little not routine, right? So the overall routine would be making sure you put time aside, but within that routine, break up some of those activities because you have now the chance to engage in multiple body parts. You have maybe some joy in there instead of drudgingly going through the same thing you did. And hopefully this will help you stay on track. So, many of us have intentions. The morning comes to do your morning workout and you hit the snooze, oh, I don't have time, we'll do that later. Well, remind yourself that you've made this commitment and have a mindset. And some of it is difficult and there might be days like that, but for the most part, trying to push through and realize this is kind of a job. This is, important for your body, and keeping track of those activities. And we'll talk about that in a minute will maybe help. And looking at your tracking device that you might have. And then putting some activities that are more bang for your buck. There are really good workouts online. Some of them are get a really high intense workout in 10 minutes. If you can do a bunch of burpees and you can do a bunch of jump squats, go for it. Get them in for shorter periods of time. If you're a new beginner and you have to, take a little longer time to get that in, and your workouts are a little longer, that's fine, but try to get the most bang for your buck. Okay? And also be mindful about moving. So people still ask, when should I work? So when's the best time? What do I do? Well, there's no when, really. It's when you will do it. That's the point. There's no better fat utilization or this or that, because it really doesn't matter unless you do it, right? So when will you do it? what will work best for you. I personally like to get it done in the morning because who knows what happens for my work days, what's going to happen. If I get to do another workout in the afternoon, that would be lovely. But I know that if I get up at 6 and I schedule myself to make my coffee and get my routine done, I know I will do it. So what works best for you? Do you know you have from 2 to 3 in the afternoon to do it? So that's when that's the important part. So also, if you've not exercised before, absolutely check with your doctor, and you want to be sure you're safe to start a program. You want to make sure you're checked out and your doctor said, you know what, you haven't worked out in a while, but you're still good to go. Then you can start beginning a program. Really important would be the warm up. Doesn't have to be a fancy warm up of any sort. It could be a brisk walk. You do get your blood flowing, get it moving through the muscles before stretching. You don't want to do cold stretches. You just want to get your body moving. You can do jumping jacks, modified slow jumping jacks, just something to get your body moving, stepping in place. And then these are the 3 categories I came up with, really: the cardio, resistive, and core. So cardio, again, using those guidelines, you can go up as high as 750 minutes a week, but around 150 to 300 will be a good goal for your best of cardiac effect, meaning it helps reduce your diseases by getting those cardiac workouts in. I would suggest at least 2,000 steps a day for the bare minimum active steps. I'm not just talking about general steps, walking around your house. An active step, meaning you're doing some kind of moderate activity, a purposeful step, how about that? And then if you're looking at an overall steps per day, we keep doing research, we keep coming back to the same thing. It's around 10,000 steps a day. So within that 10,000 steps, you do want to have a couple that are a little higher, more active, considered to be more structured exercise. I'm talking about stepping and walking because that's easy for everyone to do and everyone knows how to do it, right? But you can translate this to hiking, you can translate this to a bike, you can translate that to whatever you want, but this is a good frame of reference for everybody. I'm getting a little creative here with resistive training. So there are many of us who, even during COVID, were trying to get weights for their house and they couldn't get them. Everything was getting sold out. People are putting gyms in at their home. You don't have to go and buy all that stuff. You can start off as easy as maybe getting a jug full of water and using that for some kind of resistive training. You could fill up some old socks, put some sand in them, tie them in a knot, and put, 5 pounds of sand in a sock. I have a couple of pictures in a few minutes. You could use your pets to lift them up and put them down. So you could be creative. Exercise bands are relatively inexpensive and they all come with some beginning instruction. And then you could also just use your body weight. All right, I just showed you how just standing up and sitting down as a squat. And I do have a video, I'm not sure I'll have time to share it, but I've included some really beginner YouTube videos that you could use your body weight to even do push-ups off of a wall. You don't have to be able to do a push-up or a modified one, you can use your wall. So having some of those creative pieces of resistive workouts in your day are really helpful. Last but not least is the core. So right now I'm engaging my core because I'm sitting at the very edge of my chair. I'm not slouching down or getting slumped over. I'm engaging it. I have a ball that I sit on in my office at home and I can't slouch because I'll fall off my ball. So using a core movement all the time, really engaging my core, having yoga incorporated somehow in your routine could be very beneficial, even beginner yoga where you're using some of the very beginner tree poses where you're standing on one foot. All of those over time and engaging your core is really important. You will see an immediate benefit with some of these because you're get a little tired at the beginning, but you're using all these small little muscles in your core that you might not use regularly. Because if you think about it, you're sitting at your desk or you're driving in your car, and a lot of those core muscles do not get engaged. So using some of these lower impact core movements are really important. And I just threw like a basic standing in place marching with your knees up for core movement. And again, a lot of these are found online. All right, so this from the internet. This is a good example of some creative workouts. This really creative woman here has some sacks of potatoes that she's lifting, and she has hung them on a broom handle. So she's hanging, I don't know if that's a 3-pound bag of yams, and she's got another bag of similar that she bought hanging on her broom, and she's doing bent over rows. How creative is that? She's doing, she's also holding on to a duffel bag for a squat. Don't know what she has in her duffel bag, but you can put whatever you want in there to give it a little weight. And her posture and her core, she's engaging both of them, especially if she's holding on to it instead of just keeping your hands on your side. Just really creative household. She's also doing leg lifts here. She's doing a core movement. She's probably bringing her legs down and touching the top of her rolls of toilet paper. And she's using her puppy as something as she's lifting up. And this is another yoga move. I call it a boat move. I'm not sure if there's another name for it, but she's using that as a little resistive weight, and she's giving her puppy some attention at the same time. So here are a couple of the videos. I'm not sure if I want to try to open them up. Miranda, what do you think? I don't know if you even have time, but these are beginner workouts, and I know you're sharing this with everyone. These are just two.
You want to try one? See how it goes?
Try one? Sure. These are two really, let's see if they open right away if I lose everybody. Did my screen change?
You might have to stop sharing and then share whatever is on the other screen. Does that make sense, Michelle?
Yeah, I have to do that when I share it at school too. I have to unfortunately stop.
But it's been a great presentation so far.
Thank you. All right, it's trying to load. I'm gonna make sure it loads before I reshare. Yeah, it's not reloading. I don't know why. All right, I've got it on. Let me go and reshare. Okay, can everyone see?
Yes.
At the elbow and feeling your shoulder blades move apart. These are called wall push-ups. Perform these for reps, aiming to build up to 10 to 15 reps per set. And just like the last exercise, we want to do at least 3 and possibly 4 sets if you feel up for it. To make the exercise more challenging, you can place your hands on a tabletop or countertop and perform incline push-ups. With these, you have a smaller angle to the floor, and that makes it more difficult because of more resistance. And of course, once those get easy, you can always move to the floor. I recommend starting off your floor push-ups on your knees. So in a kneeling position, lean forward so the weight is on your hands and you're feeling it in your upper back and shoulders, and perform push-ups in this position. And once you get those up to 10 to 15 reps, you can then advance it by coming up onto your toes into a straight plank and performing push-ups in a standard form like this. After 3 to 4 sets of your pushing exercises for chest, shoulders, and arms, we want to move on to a pulling exercise to build pulling strength. Stand in front of a doorway and then raise your arms up so they're in the door frame. Externally rotate so your hands are facing outwards and you can grab onto the door jamb. And then what you're going to do is step your feet forward so your feet are right on the trim in the doorway. Here, you're going to let your elbows unbend so you're extending your arms and leaning back so you feel a good stretch in your back. And from there, you're going to pull yourself up and forward into the doorway and then extend back and pull forward. This exercise is called Let Me Ins, and it's great for working the muscles of your upper back like the rhomboids, also the rear deltoids, and depending on your grip, possibly your lats and biceps too, like if you do this holding onto a railing or a fence post or something like that. Now notice here that I'm on my heels and then pulling forward to my toes, and then going back to my heels, pulling forward to my toes. That's important to keep in mind. When you lean back, you want to make sure you go completely on your heels so there's maximum resistance for the exercise. Also, to make this exercise more difficult, you can step forward so that your feet are inside the door frame. Now you're kind of in the room that you're standing in front of, and that will add to the resistance. Along with that, you can also bend slightly at the knees to increase the resistance even further.
All right, so that's just a snapshot of what is out there. Let me go ahead and share my screen again with my PowerPoint.
We see the double screen again.
Yeah, oh gosh. Better? Okay, hold please. Let me see here. You still seeing that?
We see your new Vance screen.
Hold on, I'm sorry guys, hold on a second. I don't know why it's doing that. Let's see. Hold on a second. I only have 2 more slides left, but I'm not sure why this isn't letting me share. How about that?
Yes, then just starting from that slide because it's got everything on it.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
I've got too many screens here. That's the problem. Okay.
There
good.
you go. Yep.
All right.
Perfect.
So those are just good examples of, I literally took me 20 minutes to go through some of these to find it. Please use this as a reference because then there's also a bunch of other beginner exercises and you don't need equipment. So YouTube's a great resource. So in addition to getting it done, what's more motivating to see what you've done, right? So we have a whole bunch of trackers. I happen to have a watch. There's all kinds of trackers you could use. They still even sell the little clippable ones that you clip on your waist. They still sell those, believe it or not, which will just give you steps. But whatever you feel will give you motivation to look at your workouts will keep you going. I know the days that I feel like I sat a lot, sometimes I look at my watch, I go, oh my gosh, I've only gotten 4,000 steps in today. No wonder I feel like I sat a lot, because I did sit a lot. And that kind of encourages me to make sure that I get my walk in a little bit more, that I spend some time in the yard, or that I do something. So that's my way of logging my workouts. And some actually people have physical books that they log their workouts and keep them on track. So that really gives you an awareness of what works, what doesn't work. Maybe you notice that you're skipping workouts because you don't like something or that the time is bad. But keeping track is really going to help you figure it out. And also you could take note of what you're doing. You know, if you start off with doing, 20 squats and all of a sudden those are easy, well, maybe you should be increasing them and writing down what you're doing to give your, to remind you that look where I started and now I'm going to increase it. There are lots of apps out there. There's an app that comes with your devices, but there's also just general apps you could buy. I don't have pictures of all of them, but there are things like Strava. There's things like Strava. There's the fitness app that comes with an iPhone. There's Garmin. There's a whole bunch of different websites and free apps you could get with fitness tracking. And most of our phones have one built in that you just have to go and access under the health data. All right, well, we all know setbacks are going to happen because they do, just like eating. Making sure you keep on the right track, reminding yourself that guess what, you can get back on track. The problem with setbacks is that they are discouraging, but you also have to realize, you just have to start all over until you get it right. And it might take a while. Just like with being on a healthy diet, don't beat yourself up about it, but also don't give it too much time that you're like, oh, today's Monday and I already missed my workout. All right, I'll start next Monday. The better mindset would be, I'm going to get right back on track tomorrow and try it again. Behavior changes are difficult and things get in the way, but don't beat yourself up. Just get back on track and use that chance to rethink about your goals and maybe things aren't set up the right way at this point and restructure your goals a little bit. There are my references, and I want to thank you guys. And I think I have a few minutes for questions and answers.
Michelle, thank you. That was quite thorough and full of many different aspects of staying active. We want to open this up for questions. What questions do some of you have? Mary, go ahead.
I just want to thank Michelle for a great presentation and give a testimony about setbacks and self-compassion. During the pandemic, my husband, my partner, and I went on walks every day through the neighborhood. And in the last 9 months, I've been going to a lot more meetings because of a change in my life and gained some weight back and didn't take as many steps. But then a local organization started a Run Like a Wolf competition to raise money for the Wolf Conservation Center. And I thought, well, I can't run, but I can enter it and try and participate in the way I can. And so for the entire month of August, I made an effort to walk every day, to try and walk as much as a wolf would run. And I've done it. And it's important to remember that we're all human beings and you have to practice compassion with yourself as well as others. And that compassion will help pull you through any setbacks you have. That's it. Not a question, but just a testimony.
That's awesome, Mary. That's a big ask because wolves, I would imagine, do a lot of running and walking because they cover lots of ground. So, but that spoke to you, and that's exactly what everybody needs. Something that, following somebody else's lead or getting information from somebody's one thing, but what is going to speak to you and make you motivated and give you a purpose. So that's awesome, Mary. Any other questions? Jenny, I see you just got on the video. Do you have a question? You're showing your, hi.
Hi. No, I don't really have any questions. I've just started my exercise journey about a month ago. Made a lot of changes in how I'm eating. So I loved the tips with not having to have equipment.
Yeah. Whatever you can find, use it. Yeah. So that it's easy to hate housework, but I do speed housework. And it doesn't make it any more fun, but at least I'm killing two birds with one stone, right?
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So yeah, everyone has to clear out of the house because I'm like, I got a vacuum and I'm using it. So watch out. But yeah, that's all. Yeah. There's so many things you can use around the house, Jenny. So I'm glad that you appreciate that. So any other tips I come up with, I'll send those to Miranda. She can post them. You're
Thank you.
welcome.
This is Jennifer. I also have a question.
Sure.
Thanks. I think you had said like gone are the days where you want to do light reps, light weights with many repetitions. So I mean, I'm sure it does vary by individual, but like what is kind of the minimum amount of weight you recommend, or like how many reps, should you feel fatigued by the weight or something like that?
It's again, yeah, you're right. It's all individual. But I think my reference was more like, you get in on a routine and you just pick up the same weights each time, you do curls, you're not really feeling anything. You're doing something, but you might not be really engaging and changing and making an impact. So my suggestion, and there's also a time where you want to do those lighter, less heavy reps, still wanting to feel that fatigue on the last few reps. That's the key. So you're a beginner, let's say, curling biceps and doing a bicep press. By the last two, you should be feeling that fatigue to push over your head. You shouldn't be quivering and like pop yourself on the head with it, but it should be a challenge. So whatever those weights are within that zone, whether you're beginner, which you do want to have 10 to 12 reps in, or if you're experienced and you're going a little heavier, those last couple of reps should have that fatigue and challenge. If you're whipping through them and you're not really, basically you're just kind of you're doing something, but you're really just going through the motions. One more caveat is that the way you want to look at your workouts is that those lighter weights, if you're doing fast enough, could be more cardio based. And they serve a purpose, but then outside of that, you do want to have something a little bit more strenuous that you have a little bit more stronger resistance. So when I'm training my clients, I'll have 3 months of like 10 to 12 reps of stability and getting their body into, they're getting used to the movements, they're adapting. And then maybe we'll go a little heavier for the next month. Maybe we'll do 6 to 8 reps and really struggle on those last 2 because we've already developed a base. So there's 2 approaches I think you're asking about. What is gone are the days is like you're doing the same thing for 6 months and you're lifting 10-pound curls just to get it done. Your body adapted already. You're not really doing much, right? So that's kind of I think that's what you're asking, right, Jennifer?
Yes, and you anticipated my second question, which was about using light weights for like to increase your cardio.
Yeah. Those are definitely usable. That's definitely something that can be done and it has been used, but making sure you're pushing, that resistive training and challenging those neurological connections that we don't challenge without heavy weights. And using that opportunity to activate those muscles that you're not activating. So there's a blend of the 2, not doing extremes of either, right?
Thanks so much. And I love the talk. And I'll just put a plug in for 2 apps. One is Stride Kick, where you can like make groups and set goals, or they're also just general challenges. And the other is Charity Miles. So you can like I fund myself and then it donates to a charity, but you could always ask other people.
Yeah, if you can share those in the chat, that'd be great.
Sure.
Any other questions? Wow, right on time, Miranda.
It is right on time. Michelle, thank you. You know, it's interesting. I talked to someone the other day who doesn't have a lot of time and also has been a little bit weaker, feeling weaker. And she actually used the ability to go up and down her stairs at home as a measurement of her stamina. And she went from a very small number of flights in a day without getting winded to much more. And it took time to increase that. So I love how you really emphasize that you can do a lot of things at home with just what you have.
Yeah,
And that makes it a little bit easier as a caregiver who maybe doesn't have the time, but it could be 10 minutes, you know, it could be 5 minutes, who knows, intermittent throughout the day even.
absolutely. Yeah, you don't have to do it all at once. And I think you just jumped on something. I noticed at the end, and I hope people hear this part. But I like to use this formula: consistency plus time equals success. So you could do this all you want here and there and not be consistent, but it's really, that's what paid off for her, is that she was consistently challenging herself over time. And you just mentioned it took time, but that's a big formula people miss. They start something, they stop it. Oh, I've been doing it. Well, have you been? You need to be consistent. You need to give it time. So I appreciate that.
That is fantastic. No, thank you so much, Michelle. All the comments in the chat are just so grateful for what you provided and inspirational. I think you
Awesome.
provided a
I'm
lot of
so happy to
inspiration for
help.
us.
Yeah,
So thank you.
anytime. You're welcome.
All right. And in the chat are the apps that Jennifer was talking about
Yeah,
as
see
well,
those charity miles. Yeah,
and Stride
Stride.
Kick. So,
awesome. Thank you very much, Jennifer.
and thank you. This will be on recorded. It is recorded. It'll be on the Goldstone website so that if anyone forgets any of the details that Michelle talked about, you can see it again. So Michelle, thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone, have a wonderful day.
Thanks, you too. Thanks, guys.